Welcome to Bet On It. College football week 7. Time sure flies when you're having a great time. And I'm always having a blast here with Marco D'Angelo and Joe Raineri. Behind the scenes, man, if we could just get some outtakes, would be some pretty funny stuff. We've got a big show for you guys today. We're going to go over a couple of marquee games, some barking dogs, maybe the deli's back open, who we're fading in the public, and of course, some TNA from Ralph Michaels. I'll finish up with those best bets. At Joe Raineri, at Marco D'Angelo. Make sure you guys are following both of these guys on Twitter. We're starting off in the SEC. Saturday, CBS, 3:30 Eastern. Alabama, 7.5 point favorite. Total 65.5 at Tennessee. Somebody talk me off the Vols. Getting just over a touchdown here at home. Marco D'Angelo, you're up first.
Yeah, Kelly, we're doing these games because obviously there's, no bigger marquee game than this one with Alabama and Tennessee. And last week, Alabama, was able to escape another close scare with Texas A&M. You almost thought Texas A&M was going to pull it out. And for whatever reason, Jimbo Fisher can't beat anybody else, but he handles Saban pretty good. But maybe it's just he's got his number and knows how to do it, or maybe not having Bryce Young in the lineup was the big factor. Right now, looking at it, I'm going to have to look at Alabama. I just look at this Tennessee team. They look so attractive. They look like such a live dog. Will I get to the window? I don't know if I've got enough guts to do it because Tennessee does look like a good home dog, but I'm not sold on the Tennessee defense. That's where I'm at here. Their two signature wins prior to last week was Pitt in Florida. The Pitt win and the Florida win does not look as good as they did earlier in the year. Pitt is not good. And in that game, Pitt lost their quarterback as well, and Pitt still scored 27 points, tied the game up late, and it took Tennessee late in that game to get the go-ahead touchdown. The Florida game, we've seen what Florida has done. They had that great game at the beginning of the season against Utah, and it's been a little lackluster since then. They did beat up on LSU, but the market on LSU has been down. So LSU, I think, Tennessee favored, or not favored, but they have been winning and doing it as a favorite. Now as a dog, does look attractive, but I'm going to go with the pedigree here. I'm going to go with Alabama, and Alabama has scored 45 or more in 5 of the last 6 outings against Tennessee. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think Alabama's going to get it done. I've got Alabama winning 41-30 for my opinion on this one. But as I said, Kelly, we got to do it because it's a marquee game. I don't know that it's going to get to my actual card.
Joe, my concern is exactly what Marco said, that maybe Tennessee might be a square dog here. And we know sometimes those square dogs have fleas. Your thoughts on this SEC matchup?
I don't think it's absolutely going to be a square dog. Still a lot of questions about the status of Bryce Young. Is he going to go? Is he not going to go? I think all indications are, at least at this point on Wednesday, that he's a go. Cal, but I do think that there's only really one way to look at this game, which is exactly the same way I have looked at most of Tennessee games here over the Josh Heupel era, and that's in the first half. And the fact that I am getting 4.5 points, we talked about it last week. Josh Heupel's record in the first half, last 5 years. We had 3 years at UCF, 2 now with the University of Tennessee. It should not be a shock to anybody how fast Tennessee comes out and plays and how they get ahead. When they go to the break, Tennessee is ahead. I think he's now with the cover last week in the first half, 19-2 now in the first halves here for Tennessee. Both of these teams, offensively and defensively, in the first half, the numbers, Cal, are identical. So the fact that I can get 4.5 points right now with the home dog in the first half, I expect nothing to change from these two teams. So I'm all about give me the points, give me the first half, Tennessee. Like Marco had said, last year it was all about what happened late in the game. I don't see that changing here either. It's going to be all what happens in that fourth quarter again. And whoever wins the fourth quarter, in all likelihood, is going to win this game. By that time, we'll have already cashed our ticket in the first half.
I don't hate that angle, Joe Raineri. Always bringing in the interesting first half stats. But now let's pivot over to the Big Ten. And I don't have a lot to say. I'll save it for the end of the show. Penn State at Michigan, a 7-point underdog, total 52. Joe Raineri, what say you?
Well, what say me is we got Penn State coming off of a bye week, so they've had a little extra time to prepare for this. I don't know that it's going to help. We also have Jim Harbaugh in a spot, Cal, that has been, shall we say, a home favorite against ranked teams. Yeah, it's not been good for Harbaugh over the years. This is not an ideal spot for him by any stretch. The one thing that I am very, very sure about both of these two teams is that defense can be played and will be played. We've seen Michigan in a number of games again this year take a little time to get the offense rolling, right? It happened again in the first half against Indiana last week. But then in the second half, they put it together, made the adjustments, and ran away with it. I think Penn State's offense is still a work in progress here, and I don't think going to Michigan and playing against that defense is somehow going to make things puppy dogs and rainbows here. I think they're going to struggle. I think Michigan is going to struggle offensively. So I am looking, Cal, shocker, I am looking at the under in the first half here, 26 and a half. The total for the game is bounced back and forth, went from 51 and a half, 52 and a half, back down to 51 and a half. I think the offenses are going to struggle. I do think eventually Michigan will do some things in the second half to show that they just have more talent offensively. But in the first half, I think this is going to be a very in the trenches kind of game early here. So under in the first half for me.
Marco, Joe's looking at the defensive side of the ball because both teams lack a few things offensively. But I need to know who's going to win this game, most importantly.
Well, Kelly, I can't disagree with what Joe said for the first half because these two coaches are not coaches that like to take chances either. So obviously, I think it'd be like a prize fight with two undefeated teams. They're going to just throw a few jabs that beginning of that game, not wanting to make a mistake. But I look at this one, and I got to look to the dog in this one because I look at Michigan, and man, it looks nice. I see all those 51-7s and 56-10s and 59-0. And then I look and I see Colorado State, Hawaii, and Connecticut. My God, could you have scheduled 3 easier cupcakes to start your season than Michigan did? Okay, then they stepped it up. Maryland, Iowa, and Indiana. Well, Iowa's the best team in that bunch, and they can't score a touchdown, okay? So I'm not sold on how good Michigan is or isn't. We're going to find out more about them this week. I do know that Penn State, although their schedule's not been that much better, it has been much better. Looking at on the road, they opened the season at Purdue. Not that Purdue is a powerhouse, but that was the Thursday night opener. Standalone game on a Thursday night. You know, the crowd's different when you get those midweek games. And it was a blackout in Purdue, their version of the whiteout, all of that. And they were able to handle a back and forth game, winning it at the end 35-31. Yeah, they gave up 31 points, but they showed me that they could win in a hostile environment when they had to come from behind. That is huge. Then they went on the road to Auburn. Granted, Auburn's down this year, but that's still an SEC school on a Saturday night. I'm sorry. That's more impressive than anything Michigan has done so far. I'm going to go ahead and take Penn State here. Penn State's defense makes you work for it. A stat I like to look at is yards per point. How many yards do you got to go to score a point? They're 6th in the country defensively in that. They're number 7 against the run, allowing only 82 yards per game against the run. Let's see what Michigan's got to do if they become one-dimensional in this game. Give me Penn State plus the points. I think they're a quality live dog. I got a feeling, Kelly, if you're not talking about this game right now, I know where you're at.
Well, now that Marco did all the heavy lifting for me, let's go see what Ralph Michaels has dug up for us in college football this week. There he is, the man with the pen and the nerd charts. We'll get to that nerd chart here at the end of the segment. But Ralph, you've dug up some really awesome TNA for us, college football week 7. What do you got?
Kel, before I get to that, I do want to let people know about a special I have. A great week with the NHL starting. College football has my first 5% college football totals play in 11 months. My 5% totals plays 11-3 the last 14. And number 2 in NHL win percentage last week. The NBA starts next week. Number 1 in NBA win percentage and number 1 in NBA profit. I did the perfecta in that. A great time. 7 days of all access for the price of 3. Use coupon WOW59. That's WOW59 and buy that 7-day package. Pay the same price as just 3 days. We have 4 college systems we're going to talk about. First, this is from week 4 on. So we're eliminating those first few games of the season. We have a home favorite of 3.5 or more. That is off a road win where they scored 42 points, playing a team off a road loss that allowed 41 or more. So a positive situation with an offense doing well, facing a defense that didn't do well. It applies to Ole Miss against Auburn this week. Ole Miss beat Vanderbilt 52-28, so they scored over 42 points. Auburn lost 42-10, so they allowed 41 or more points. Those teams in the situation, 33-12 against the spread, 73.3%. System 1 says to play on Ole Miss versus Auburn. Number 2, let's look at away favorites of 6.5 or more that have a win percentage over 60%. And in their last game, they scored 16 points or less. The first system, we had a high-scoring offense. The second system, we have a winning team, obviously, with a win percentage over 60. We have a better team because they're an away favorite of 6.5 or more. And we have them off a poor offensive performance. This applies to Minnesota. Minnesota is 4-1 this year, so they have a win percentage of 80%. They lost 16-10, so their offense only scored 10 points. And they are an away favorite of over 6.5. Teams in this situation, 36-16, 69.2%. System 2 says to play on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
Ralph, I'm going to interrupt you before you go to System 3. Sorry for our producer having to cut in there. It's something I want to address and something we've talked about on the show several times, but each and every week we have new viewers. So just to clarify something, for example, this week I lean Illinois. Ralph comes in with a pretty interesting trend here on the Gophers that may keep me off of the Illini, but that doesn't necessarily mean I shouldn't play or I should play. This is kind of an extra little nudge, if you will. Last week I had somebody tweet me, Kelly, why would you go against Ralph's TNA and take Northwestern? I'm like, well, joke's on me. I had already bet it on Tuesday. I had already talked about it on another show. So I felt as if I still needed to give it out on Twitter for transparency. So Ralph, can you explain to people that are new here what TNA is actually for?
Well, Kel, people think I'm a technical handicapper, which means using trends and angles. I would say probably only 15 to 20% of my handicapping is technicals. Obviously, I look at teams that are good away favorites, good home dogs, that type of role. But to me, you have a checklist. Does the matchup favor your team? Does the statistical profile favor your team? Does the O-line defense matchups favor your team? Are you in a revenge spot? So it is just one part of your handicapping tools. As you said, it may take a game that you semi-like and it may make it a play. It may take a game that you semi-don't like and now you all of a sudden may be a wash. It may be a game that's a 50-50, and you may start leaning that way. So by no means bet a game solely based on these situations. But we also want to help you understand situations. What are positive situations in college football and the NFL? What are negative situations? So you just become a better handicapper.
And that's why I love Ralph, because TNA, we came up with this segment because Ralph has access to some pretty incredible databases. He can find all sorts of situations, angles, and trends for us. And that's why we have this segment. So kudos to Ralph. I know he's got 2 more college football systems before we get to that nerd chart.
All right, how about an undefeated away favorite? You have to be at least 2-0. So you have to have 2 or more wins, and you have no losses, and you're an away favorite. Your opponent was an away dog last game, and your opponent's win percentage is exactly 50%. Now, some people think, well, what does 50% means? There's a lot of motivation when the team's 50%, because you could win that next game and have a winning record, lose that next game and have a losing record. So it's something I look at in both college football and the NFL. This one actually surprised me. So when a team is an away favorite that is undefeated with at least 2 wins, and their opponent is exactly 50%, and they were an away dog in their previous game. Who does that apply to? That's James Madison. James Madison, what a start to the FBS season in their inaugural year. 5-0 straight up, 5-8 ATS. They're obviously an away favorite this week. Georgia Southern was at Georgia State last week, so they were an away dog, and they're 3-3. This system says play on James Madison to go to 6-0 straight up in ATS. 66 ATS wins, 33 ATS losses, and 2 pushes. It's 67%. And one more thing, Kelly, as you pointed out, as we're trying to teach our new viewers how to handicap and what's more important, a system like this with 100 plus games of sample size is far stronger than a system with 20 or 30 sample sizes. So you have a bigger range, more teams, more seasons. And the final one, this makes perfect sense to me. A double-digit home dog that's off an away win. It's that simple. What does it mean? If you're a double-digit home dog, you are the overmatched team, no question. If you had an away win, you were obviously playing someone very poor, or perhaps, like the team we're going to talk about, Colorado State, had multiple defensive touchdowns, or two touchdowns that were caused because of defensive plays, interceptions, and fumbles. So when you have a double-digit home dog like Colorado State, that's off an away win, which they did beat Nevada last week, those teams are only 26-51, 33.9%. That says to fade Colorado State, and they're playing Utah State this week. So the system says you want to bet Utah State, but the way it's worded, you want to fade Colorado State. Both things mean the exact same thing.
Always great stuff from Ralph. If you guys have a question for Ralph, make sure you tweet him at CalSportsLV. And as Ralph mentioned, wow, 59 right now, 7 days, all access for the price of 3 days. Ralph, give me that nerd chart.
Well, as we said on the show many times, there's times we're going to talk about situations that there isn't a wow number. There's not a 60% or a 40%, but we want you to know what the situation entails, and is it worth making part of your handicapping or not? How often do you hear a team is playing a second of back-to-back road games? That's a negative. Dan, if you would show us our nerd chart number 1, take a look. This is since 2015. Teams playing back-to-back road games with no rest. So I took the rest out of it. You see that if they played on the road last week, they've covered 51.2% the next week. If they lost on the road, they've covered 51.5. If they won on the road, they covered 50.6. So what does this tell us? It tells us this, Cal. Playing back-to-back road games is not a negative. The line is adjusted. Teams are more businesslike. They're going on a business trip. They were on a road, and they're on a road again. I did want to break down, if you look at the bottom of the chart, what happens if they won as an away favorite, if they won as an away dog, if they lost as an away favorite, and if they lost as an away dog the previous week and now they're on a road again. You'll look at those percentages. 49.4 if you were off a win as an away favorite, 51.9 if you're off a win as an away dog. So nothing there. Again, not a negative, but not a positive. This situation has been a negative. Teams that lost as an away favorite and are now on the road again, would you expect them to bounce back? I would, but that's not the facts. The facts are teams that lost as an away favorite one week and are now on the road a second week have only covered 44% against the spread. That's why it's marked in red. It's a negative situation, and it does apply to two teams this week. Both Kent State and Air Force are off losses as a straight-up loss as an away favorite, and now on the road again this week.
That's great information, as always, from Ralph, and that's why we love having him here on Bet On It. We are going to take a quick commercial break, but then when we come back, it's time for those barking dogs.
Each and every Monday is $9 Monday at both wagertalk.com and sportsmemo.com, when all daily picks packages are priced at only $9, including 5% best bets, normally priced at $35. As an added bonus, any picks packages loaded early for overnight Tuesday or action during the week will also be priced at $9 until midnight on Monday. So make sure to take advantage of getting these $25 and $35 picks for only $9 before the clock strikes 12 and they return to regular price.
Welcome back to Bet On. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with Ruby there for about the last 60 seconds, because now we're going to talk my favorite segment. That's right, barking dogs. I am really struggling with college football this week, so let's see if the guys can help me out. Maybe find one of those touchdown or greater dogs, Marco D'Angelo.
Well, Kelly, I don't have one of those large dogs like you want, but I'll tell you what, I got to get credit for the dog I'm taking, because I'm going against a public team that everybody's back in love with. They're 6-0. They're Clemson. They're back. They're going to battle for the national championship. Just slow down, everybody. Who has Clemson beat? They're 6-0. 4 of the 6 games that they won and dominated were against just horrible teams. Georgia Tech, Furman, Louisiana Tech, and Boston College. I don't think you could take all 4 of those teams and take the best players from those 4 teams and put them all on an all-star team and still come up with a good team. They did beat Wake Forest, but they were life and death at Wake Forest. That was the epic overtime game. Both teams went up and down the field. Finally, Clemson gets the final score, 51-45. Then the NC State game. That was the game. Yeah, I liked NC State in that one. And they were getting 6.5, and he ended up losing by 10. That game was closer than the final score would indicate. The difference in that game was +2 in turnovers for Clemson. I think Florida State can stay with them in this game. And the line is telling you that. You're looking at, 3.5. I see a few 4s out there around because the public's going to want Clemson. I'm just not sold on the Clemson quarterback. If he can run free, he does well. But when he's got to carry the team, throwing the football, it's a different story. And I don't think they're going to have a lot of success against Florida State running the football, and he's going to have to throw the football in this game. I'm going to take Florida State in this one. I've got it 27-24. I'm going to call for the upset with Florida State. So it's not a big dog, Kelly, but I got a big set taking Florida State against Clemson. So I got to get some points for that, style points.
I think that's my whole problem, is that this week I'm looking at 3.5-point dogs, 4-point dogs. There's one double-digit dog and a couple around a touchdown. And I just looked in the Kentucky Wildcats, 7 is now 4.5. So I guess there's another one off my list. Thank you, Wager Talk On Screen. Middle of the show, just ruining my afternoon. Joe Raineri, I didn't get your dog before the show because you don't ever drop your stuff in Slack. So
That's
surprise me here.
Yes, absolutely correct. Because I don't want Marco stealing my shit. That's why. All right, here we go.
Oh, you know what? Marco's stealing it. Should we talk about the allegations from the Bet On It group chat?
Every day.
Should we address
every time.
this?
The guy puts his picks in like 30 hours ahead of time, and every time I finally get around to seeing it, I'm like, he took my play. He took another one of my, and then I ate his friggin' sandwich last week, and I had to hear it all week long. So this time I made sure we have none of Marco's plays in there, but my dog is going to be the mullet, man. I gotta go. I'm gonna be a homer here. Give me the battle of the unbeatens and give me Oklahoma State getting 4 points here. Gundy I trust here. Listen, you gotta love Oklahoma State last week. They did not cover. We did end up cashing a ticket. If you bet it early enough, get 10.5 or even 11, in which it reached before kickoff against Texas Tech. They pulled away at the end, but they only won by 10. So it was a good cover last week for those that faded Oklahoma State, but this is not the spot to do it in. Listen, I watched that Kansas game with TCU. It's a fun team to watch. Really, really fun team to watch. But I got to tell you, Oklahoma State showed me a little something there. Just when I thought Texas Tech might have an opportunity to pull off the total upset, Spencer Sanders and this offense rose to the occasion every time in the second half. When you look at the numbers here, guys, there's nothing not to like here. Gundy, 13-5-1 against the number against ranked teams since 2018. 5-0 ATS run right now, Oklahoma State in the Big 12. They're on a 10-1 ATS streak in Big 12 games in the regular season right now. As much as and as fun as it has been watching TCU, I do like and trust the Oklahoma State defense more here. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, and I think Oklahoma State is going to do what they have done, and that has been able to score a lot of points when it matters most. The experience factor, love it with Oklahoma State, love it with Gundy. The +4 is great, but they're a money line bet for me as well here, Kel.
Of course they are, Joe. I can't believe you didn't say it. It's a look-ahead spot for TCU. Just look who they have on deck.
There's no look-aheads. There's
the best team in the Big 12.
No, none of that.
No
just math.
No flat spots.
Just math.
Wait, like they say next week. Can somebody stop talking about the freaking math, guys? It's a joke. Oh, my gosh. These two, here we are. Just once. Just once. I want them to bait into some of my BS. Is that so much to ask? Speaking of BS, Joe Raineri. Fade the public. Fade the public. Who are we fading this week?
I'm going to fade myself and take TCU. No, I'm only kidding. We are, that would be actually pretty fun.
Why are you the way that you are? This is why we can't do the live show. In case anybody want to know, this is why the show can't be live.
Correct.
Because
I just
the biggest debacle.
I just want to make sure, Marco, I'm not stealing your player because, again, this was a sandwich thing last week. It was really bad. So this week, however, I am going to fade the public who seems all into fading LSU and backing the Florida Gators here. The public loves themselves some Gators in the swamp here after they almost lost to Missouri last week. But they are backing the Gators. We got over 70% of the tickets right now. Give me some Gators. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, LSU, granted, did not look great last week. In fact, against Tennessee, that game was over. I mean, the muffed kickoff there, before you knew it, they were down 20 points, and it was sayonara, game over. And then everything after that, Cal, and I said to myself watching that game, this is going to be a time to back LSU in this next game. That game was over. It got worse for them as the game went on. But if it's one thing that we know about Brian Kelly in these spots, is that he will regroup here with these guys. The swamp is not the swamp of the Tim Tebow era, okay? Those Florida days are long gone. There's a lot of flaws with this team, and I do think the defense of LSU matches up really, really well against this Florida team. I love Richardson. I think he's great, but he is limited in what he can do. The defense at LSU is going to control the line of scrimmage, is going to control this game, and I think this is a great spot for LSU to get to bounce back and get it done on the road in the swamp against the Gators. So while the public loves Florida, I'm fading them in this one, Cal, and I am backing the LSU Tigers.
Joe, normally I don't ask these kinds of questions mid-show, but I'm curious. I felt like I needed to not play because the 3 was available. Now it's 2.5. That's some great reverse line movement.
Yep.
If you're holding a 3 or even a 3.5, you've got to feel pretty good.
Yep.
Would this be more of a money line play for you? Because I still do have LSU on my list. I do think they can win the game. Yep. Just kind of wondering if at that point it's just better to take the plus money.
Strictly with a plus money bet. I mean, the 2.5 and the 3, you can get it is great, but I would always play both in these kinds of situations. I would take the 3, and I would absolutely play the money line here because I do think it's an upset waiting to happen for Florida. But hey, if you can get 3 game time, and I think it's going to keep going that way. I think we got a great opportunity here to get at least a field goal plus the money line at a good price.
All right, awesome stuff. Joe says, buy my friend Megan's LSU Tigers at a discount, if you will. Marco D'Angelo,
thanks,
are you
Tennessee.
giving them discounts at the deli or what's going on here?
What's that? No way. I didn't think of it. Thank you so much. Joe, I just got a call from the math guys.
Okay.
And I did not realize this. Do you know that in Slack, where we post our plays for the graphics department, there's a thing called a timestamp.
Ooh, okay.
To copy my plays, yours, if I'm copying yours, your plays would have to be there first.
Yeah. I see what you're talking about here, Marco. The math guy just texted me and said, your shit is late. So apparently it was you first, and then I came in afterwards. So if any of these happen to coincide with your picks, my apologies, Marco.
I'm just glad you guys have these dorks on
because
speed
the math
dial,
guys
okay?
are always right. Let me tell you, they're always right. Don't start. All right.
They're always there.
I'm going with a sandwich game here. This is a big deli game. Guys, this is a foot-long one because you're looking at Texas, and they are coming off the absolute beatdown of Oklahoma, okay? The Red River rivalry, shootout, whatever you want to call it, they just knocked the snot out of them 49-0. Now they're playing an Iowa State team that, I know, they scored 9 points last week. They scored 11 points the week before that. We were on Iowa State last week, got there by the hook early in the week, and that was probably the most perfect outcome you could possibly have as far as Kelly and I went, because we have that season win total on Kansas State over. So a 1-point win when you're betting the dog at plus 1.5, it just doesn't get any better than that. So I'm feeling a little fat and sassy with Iowa State, and I'm going to come right back with them because Texas, off of that big win, and they were yucking it up on the sidelines. They were having a good time. They are playing next week Oklahoma State. This is an Oklahoma sandwich. And Oklahoma, they got the big showdown this week with, TCU. Who's going to come out of that one? That's going to be a big game next week, especially, obviously, if Oklahoma State wins this week like Joe predicts. I think this is, dare I say it, one hell of a look-ahead spot. My God, you're coming off Oklahoma and Oklahoma State on deck, and you're laying double digits to a team that plays great defense? Come on. I think Iowa State stays in this game. 16 points is way too many points in this game. I'm going to take Iowa State. I can't get there and call the outright upset of the 16.5-point dog, but I'll put a little there because, we want to have that if you get it. But 16.5-point dog, I'll take it because I see this as a one-possession game coming down to maybe a late field goal. Give me Iowa State plus the points. And as I always say, give me points with the better defense. I'm there. That's Iowa State here. Let's go ahead and take it.
And Marco just spoiled my double-digit underdog that I was considering for my parlay. If Iowa State could just give me a little bit more offensively, I think I might have got to the window with them defensively. I agree with everything Marco just said. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, it's time for those best bets.
Hey, NHL fans, the wait is over. The National Hockey League gets underway on Tuesday, October 11th, and last season, 8 Wager Talk handicappers went over 50 units in the NHL. To celebrate the start of the season, we are offering a 7-day NHL package for only $49. Yes, that's only $7 a day, and it will be valid through Sunday, October 9th. Don't worry, NBA fans, we'll be running the same special for you next week.
Welcome back to Bet On. It's now time for Best Bets. And I know Marco and Joe were having a little banter about stealing each other's picks. I think Marco stole my notes for the show because everything he listed about Penn State +7 at Michigan, well, is what I'm about to reiterate to you guys. I joked that I didn't really like James Franklin that much off camera, and Joe Raineri just reminded me why. He plays too conservative. Well, hopefully we can get James Franklin with a little gusto this week because he plays so well as a road underdog. 11-4 out of their last 15 in that spot. Now, the Wolverines, Marco alluded to, who have they played? Well, sometimes I don't like to beat up teams too much about their scheduling spots because they make the schedule years in advance. So I'm going to push that to the side. But I'm going to take the better defense, top-ranked rushing defense at that. As Marco said, that will make Michigan one-dimensional. I think this is going to be down to the wire in Ann Arbor. So don't forget to sprinkle a little on that money line. Marco D'Angelo, Week 7 college football. Who's your best bet?
Oh, Kelly, I love your best bet. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Why?
I will say this much. You look better saying it than me saying it. So, okay.
Thanks,
I think
Marco.
I just
You're just
raised
such
the
a
rating
gentleman.
a little bit on it. All kidding aside, getting into this one, we've got a great spot here, I think, for Oregon State playing host to Washington State. I talk about, situations all the time, and I got situations on both sides in this game. We're going to look at Washington State, and you know what? You want to talk about a game that last week maybe was misleading final score. You look at the final score and you see Southern Cal beat Washington State by 16 points as a 12-point favorite. And you say, okay, yeah, they dominated it. No, they didn't. That game was tight most of the way. And it just was one of those games where you got the final touchdown, put it over the spread, and Washington State didn't cover. But that was a big game for them playing USC. And who do they got on deck? Well, they got the other team that everybody thought was going to make the noise in the Pac-12 this year, the defending Pac-12 champs, Utah, on deck. Speaking of Utah, well, Oregon State played them 2 weeks ago and they got their doors blown off. And that was the week after they played their guts out against USC and after winning the entire game, losing at the end 17-14. That Utah loss, and it was a bad one, that's one of those ones where Kelly and I like to say they lost the game twice after the two big games, and I just think they were flat in that one with Utah. Last week, they went on the road. They showed me something. After playing those two big opponents and coming up empty in both, they could have just mailed it in on the road. They didn't. They got the job done. It wasn't pretty. They escaped with a 1-point win. They came from behind to do it, but they got the win. And I'm going to build on that momentum coming back home. That 1-point win at Stanford last week, 28-27, I think sets them up for a big game here against Washington State in the unfavorable spot. I like Oregon State because they're a physical team. They're going to run the football down your throat, but they're not a one-trick pony. This team throws for well over 200 yards per game. What happens is when you come up to stop that run, it opens up the passing lanes for big plays off of play action and misdirection. I love this Oregon State offense, two-dimensional. Which one are you going to try to stop? And their physicality. Let's go with Oregon State. I'm going to lay the points to 3.5 here. I think we're getting a soft number because of the two losses and then the narrow win last week. I got them winning 34-23. That's my best bet, Oregon State.
All right, Joe Raineri, finish us up here. It's been a long day dealing with you two.
For the record, that was going to be my best bet until Marco stole it, but that's a different story. So I had to move on to another best bet here, and which is just as good because I like this one even better. And Cal, I'm going to look at the new kid on the block here, and it's a big saying of ours, right? If it ain't broke, don't friggin' fix it. And James Madison laying 11.5 against Georgia Southern is an absolute situation in which do not try to fix it. It ain't broke. I mean, what else can you do besides go 5-0 straight up and against the number, winning by a combined 221-275. If you guys haven't had a chance to watch the Dukes play here, James Madison, it is a well-coached, well-organized, well-put-together team that is running through competition. And, oh, yeah, whoever thought it wasn't a great idea to allow a team coming up a level to FBS here and having to sit out a year because that means that they won't be allowed to go to a bowl game. Every game is a bowl game to them. You pissed them off, and now you're going to have to deal with it. This team is a lot of fun to watch, and they take absolutely no prisoners. Georgia State can't stop anybody. Can't stop a nosebleed. They can't stop anybody. They are not going to stop this team. They've allowed 34 or more points in 4 of 6, and I can see absolutely more than 34 points being gotten here by James Madison. The Dukes are going to run over Georgia Southern. The fact that I think 11.5 right now, Cal, I'm shocked. They are going to try to throw the ball there, Georgia Southern. They'll get a few points, but no. They turn it over 12 times in 6 games. That is a recipe for easy touchdowns with this James Madison team. Lay the 11.5, guys. Do it. Don't worry about it. Lay it. Take it. James Madison crushes Georgia Southern.
Ooh, and that fills in nicely with some Ralph Michaels TNA. We're going to take our last commercial break. When we come back, it's time for the recap.
You're a winner at Wager Talk even before the game is played with our Wager Rewards program. How does it work? Simple. Earn wager rewards on every purchase made at Wager Talk and Sports Memo. Those wager rewards can be converted into wager bucks on the first of every month. There is no additional fee to participate, and no additional details are required outside your valid Wager Talk or Sports Memo membership. On the first of each month, 5% of your wager rewards will be converted to wager bucks, which are available to purchase on all future purchases. Doesn't it feel good to be part of a rewards program with no additional hoops?
All right, let's put a pretty little bow on this thing for you and get the hell out of here before these guys make one more terrible joke. Alabama at Tennessee. Alabama just laying over a touchdown, and that's where Marco's going in this one. Joe's going to pivot and take Tennessee in the first half, says Josh Heupel is the way to go in the first half of the game. And you guys will know on Friday if I get to the window with Tennessee. Penn State, Michigan. Well, Marco gave basically out my best bet for me, +7. We're on the same side. I always like to be in the same quarter as either Marco or Joe. Joe says, take the first half under 26. This is going to be a punch in the mouth for both teams defensively. Doesn't expect to see a lot on the offensive side of the ball. Some barking dogs, even though the guys didn't help me out with big enough ones. Joe's being a homer and taking Oklahoma State +4. And Marco said, don't fall for that trap in one of the teams that's back in Clemson. Take Florida State +3.5. Fade Joe Public. Joe says LSU +2.5 and LSU on the money line. I tried to get Marco on the money line with Iowa State, and he said maybe just a little tiny baby sprinkle. God, I can hope that I can make the Cyclones make my parlay this week because I like them as well. I already told you guys my best bet was Penn State. Marco's is Oregon State. And Ralph Michaels and Joe Raineri are in lockstep with James Madison -11.5. For myself, Marco, Joe, and Ralph, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us each and every week here on the college football edition of Bet On It. We'll see you next week. Until then, let's bet on it.